Is this some kind of joke? My father said. And then he hit me. Open palm, right across the face, in front of 40 birthday guests, on a patio I'd spent 14 hours preparing while my stepsister slept until noon. Someone dropped a glass. No one spoke. I walked out that night with nothing but a backpack and a bruise swelling purple under my eye. I didn't know it then, but that slap would be the last thing Victor Ashford ever did to me, because by midnight, I'd be sitting across from a stranger who'd tell me I wasn't who I thought I was, that I'd never been the burden they said I was, that I was something else entirely, and they'd been stealing from me for 15 years. Before we go any further, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if stories like this truly resonate with you. And I'd love to know, where are you listening from right now? And what time is it there? Share it in the comments. My name is Nadia. I'm 21 now, but for most of my life, I answered to whatever Victor decided to call me that day. Girl, you, the help. Let me take you back to that night, to the moment everything cracked open. The patio was strung with white lights, 40 guests in summer linens holding wine glasses that caught the glow. Victor sat at the head of the long table like a man receiving tribute. His wife Gloria stood behind him, one manicured hand on his shoulder. My stepsister Paige perched on the armrest of his chair, filming everything on her phone. I came forward with my gift, a leather messenger bag, real leather. I'd saved for 3 months, working doubles at the diner, hiding cash in a sock because Victor monitored my bank account. I wrapped it in brown craft paper because I couldn't afford a gift bag. I thought maybe he'd smile, just once. He tore the paper, pulled out the bag, turned it over in his hands like he was inspecting evidence. "Is this some kind of joke?" he said again, louder. The guests went quiet. Forks stopped moving. "I saved up," I started to say. "I thought—" "You thought?" He stood. The chair scraped the flagstone. "You thought a girl who can't even pay rent has the right to insult me with this cheap garbage?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. And then he hit me. The sound was flat and sharp. My head snapped sideways. I tasted copper. A wine glass shattered somewhere behind me. Maybe someone dropped it. Maybe I knocked it off the table. I don't remember. What I remember is the silence. 40 people, and not one of them moved. Gloria looked down at her plate. Paige bit her lip and kept filming. A man from Victor's office studied his napkin like it held the secrets of the universe. One person stood, Mrs. Delford, the neighbor from across the street, 70 years old, barely 5 feet tall. "Victor, that was completely uncalled for," she said. "Mind your own family, Helen," he said. She sat back down, but she didn't stop looking at me. I've never forgotten that. I stood there with the taste of blood on my tongue, the bag on the ground between us, and I thought something I didn't fully understand yet. That slap is going to be evidence. I didn't go back to the party. I walked through the house, down the basement stairs, to the storage room I'd slept in since I was 6. Bare mattress, no window, a wool blanket that smelled like mildew no matter how many times I washed it. I pulled my backpack off the nail on the wall, faded black, fraying at the zipper. I packed what I could. 2 shirts, 1 pair of jeans without holes, a charger, the envelope I'd found 3 months ago in a box Victor threw away. And inside a shoebox under my mattress, $380 in cash, mostly 1s and 5s, tips from the diner I'd hidden because Victor checked my bank account every week. That was everything I owned. I walked out the front door. No one called my name. No one followed. Outside, the October air hit my face, and the bruise flared like a second slap. I had no idea where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay. I didn't know it yet that someone had been watching that house for weeks. And I didn't know that he'd been waiting for me to finally run. Let me go back to that morning, the morning of Victor's 55th birthday. the last day I'd ever spend in that house. I set my alarm for 4:30 a.m., same as every Saturday, except this Saturday came with a list. Gloria had left it on the kitchen counter the night before, written on monogrammed stationery in her careful cursive. 2 pages. Sweep the patio, arrange the chairs. 40 of them, one for each guest on Victor's list. Press the tablecloths, slice the lemons, wash the crystal wine glasses by hand because the dishwasher leaves spots, polish the silver serving platters, arrange the flowers. Their house sat on a quiet street in Ashland, Virginia. A brick colonial with white shutters, a wraparound porch, and a lawn Victor paid someone to mow but told the neighbors I did. Inside, everything gleamed. Hardwood floors I waxed every week, a dining table that seated 12, polished until you could see your reflection. On the counter, cases of imported wine, and a 3-tier cake from a bakery that probably charged more for the fondant than I made in a week at the diner. My room was in the basement, not the finished part, the storage area behind the water heater. No window, a bare bulb overhead, a mattress Victor had pulled from someone's curb when I was 9. Paige's room was on the 2nd floor. Queen bed, walk-in closet, a vanity mirror ringed with Hollywood lights. She was 23, still lived at home, still had her credit card linked to Victor's account, still hadn't learned how to cook an egg. That's what I was for. I'd started cooking the family meals when I was 8. Victor said it was to teach me responsibility. By 10, I was doing all the laundry, all the dishes, all the grocery shopping, on foot because Victor wouldn't let me use a car. Paige got a white Audi for her 16th birthday. I got a bus pass that expired after 1 month because no one renewed it. So I walked 40 minutes each way to my shifts at a diner called Oakwood Grill. Victor never let me keep my own documents. No birth certificate, no social security card. When I asked about getting a driver's license at 17, he laughed. What for? Where do you have to go? I believed him. At the time, I thought he was right. Now, I understand he designed it that way. Victor came downstairs at 10 that morning. Polo shirt, pressed khakis, cologne so thick it reached me before he did. He walked the patio like a general inspecting troops, moved one flower arrangement 3 inches to the left, looked at the lemon slices I'd arranged on the water pitchers, and said, without looking at me, "They're uneven. Do them again." Gloria appeared at noon in a silk dress I'd steamed the night before. She ran a finger along the countertop, checking for dust, then leaned close to Victor and whispered something she didn't think I could hear. But I heard. Only something cheap. Just brace yourself. Paige showed up last. New dress, new highlights, new heels clicking across the floor I'd waxed at 5 in the morning. She handed Victor an Apple Watch, the newest model, stainless steel, and the one that cost more than I made in 2 months at the diner. She charged it to the card Victor gave her for emergencies. He opened it, beamed, kissed her forehead. "This is my girl," he told the first guests walking through the door, his arm around Paige. "This is my girl. She always knows exactly what I want." He didn't look at me. He never did when people were watching. I was the girl who carried trays, refilled glasses, wiped condensation rings from tables before they could set. At one point, a woman from Victor's office, someone I'd never met, watched me pass with a tray of appetizers and said to Gloria, "Shouldn't your daughter sit down and eat with the family?" Gloria smiled, warm as a locked door. "Oh, Nadia likes to help. It's her way of showing gratitude. You know how it is with situations like hers." I kept carrying trays. The gift opening started at 8. Victor sat at the head of the table, 40 guests around him, Paige filming on her phone, Gloria standing behind him with her hand on his shoulder. And I stepped forward with my craft paper package, my heart pounding in my throat. I actually thought he might smile. I made it maybe 2 miles before the headlights appeared. Ashland at 9 p.m. in October is dark. Not city dark, where there's always a street light or a gas station glowing on the next corner. Suburb dark. The kind where the houses are spaced far apart and the silence between them feels deliberate. I was walking along Route 54. No destination, just away. The bass notes from the party had faded a long time ago. All I could hear was my own breathing and the occasional car passing without slowing down. Then one car did slow down. A black Lincoln Navigator, tinted windows, Virginia plates. It rolled to a stop about 15 feet ahead of me. The engine idled. The rear door opened. Every instinct I had said, run. But I was so tired of running from things. Maybe just this once, I thought, I'd see what was running toward me. A man stepped out. Mid-50s, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal coat that fit like someone had tailored it specifically for him. His hair was dark, threaded with gray at the temples, and his eyes. I felt the ground shift under me. His eyes were the exact same shade of brown as mine, the same shape, the same slight downward tilt at the outer corners that made people ask me my whole life why I always looked sad. Behind him, a woman emerged, shorter, dark-skinned, carrying a leather briefcase, professional, watchful. She kept her distance, studying me without speaking. The man's hands were trembling. I could see it even in the dim light from the Navigator's interior. "I'm sorry to frighten you," he said. His voice cracked on the second word. "My name is Marcus Colton." He paused, like the name should mean something to me. It didn't. "I'm your father," he said. "Your biological father, and I've been searching for you for 15 years. My shoulders hit a mailbox post. I hadn't realized I'd been stepping backwards. "That's not possible." My voice came out strange, distant. "My biological father abandoned us before I was born. He didn't want anything to do with me." Marcus Colton's face changed. Something behind his eyes flickered. Pain. Then something harder. Something that looked like 15 years of rage compressed into a single breath. "You're told that?" "My whole life." He reached into the inside pocket of his coat and pulled out a photograph, creased at the corners, clearly handled hundreds of times. A woman holding a toddler on her hip. The woman had dark hair that fell past her shoulders, high cheekbones, a small mole above her lip. She was laughing at something off camera. The toddler had my eyes. "Her name was Serena," Marcus said. "She was your mother. She died when you were 6, and I have spent every single day since then trying to find you." I looked at the photograph, then at him, then at the photograph again. The woman in it had my exact same hands, long fingers, narrow palms, the same way of tilting her head slightly to the left. "I was deployed overseas when she got sick," Marcus said. "By the time I got back, she was already gone, and so were you." He stepped closer, slowly, like he was approaching something fragile. "Victor Ashford told the courts I was unfit. He filed documents claiming I had a violent history, that I'd threatened Serena, that there was a restraining order against me." His voice tightened. "I never laid a hand on her. I never threatened anyone. Those documents were forged." The woman with the briefcase spoke for the first time. "My name is Patricia Oyalaran. I'm Mr. Colton's attorney. We've been monitoring your situation through legal channels for several months. When our investigators saw you leave the house tonight, we made the decision to approach." "You've been watching the house?" "The birthday party. Large gathering. Easiest opportunity to confirm your location without alerting Mr. Ashford." She paused. "We also saw you run." I touched my cheek without thinking. The bruise pulsed under my fingertips. Marcus looked at my face, at the marks spreading beneath my eye, and something in him cracked very quietly. "Get in the car," he said. "Please. There's something else you need to know, something about your mother's estate." "Estate?" His jaw tightened. "Nadia, your mother didn't leave you with nothing. She left you everything, and for 15 years, Victor Ashford has been spending it." We sat in the back of the Navigator, Marcus on one side, me on the other, Patricia in the front passenger seat with her briefcase open on her lap. The engine was running, the heat on low. It was the warmest I'd been all night. Marcus told me the story like a man who'd rehearsed it 1,000 times and still wasn't ready. Serena was diagnosed 8 months after I deployed, he said. Ovarian cancer. Stage 3 by the time they caught it. She didn't tell me at first. She didn't want me distracted overseas. By the time I found out, I was already fighting to get emergency leave. He paused, swallowed. I made it back 3 days before she died. 3 days. She couldn't speak anymore, but she knew I was there. She squeezed my hand. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. You were 6, he continued. You were staying with Victor and Gloria while Serena was in the hospital. It was supposed to be temporary. Victor was her stepbrother. They weren't close, but he was the only family nearby. I thought... His voice broke. I thought you'd be safe. Patricia turned slightly in her seat. While Mr. Colton was handling funeral arrangements and processing his emergency discharge from the military, Victor Ashford filed for temporary guardianship. He told the court that Marcus had abandoned the family, that he'd been absent for years, that Serena had expressed concerns about his fitness as a parent. None of it was true, Marcus said. I was deployed. I sent money home every month. I called every week. Serena and I were planning for me to transition out of the service that year so I could be home full time. But Victor had paperwork, Patricia said. A signed statement allegedly from Serena expressing her wish that you be placed with him. A psychiatric evaluation allegedly showing Marcus as unstable. A restraining order allegedly filed by Serena 6 months before her death. Allegedly, I repeated. Forged, Marcus said. All of it. But by the time I hired a lawyer and challenged the guardianship, the court had already granted Victor permanent custody. The file was sealed, and every time I tried to petition for visitation, Victor produced that restraining order. He looked out the window. I could see his reflection in the glass, jaw tight, eyes wet. I spent 15 years trying to find you. I hired investigators, I filed appeals. I showed up at that house twice, and both times Victor called the police and had me removed. I remembered something then, a memory so old it felt like someone else's. I was maybe 7 or 8, a man at the front door, shouting, Victor shoving him back. Gloria pulling me into the kitchen, covering my ears, telling me it was just a crazy person, nothing to worry about. That was you, I whispered. Marcus nodded. You were standing in the hallway. You looked right at me, and then Gloria pulled you away, and I never saw your face again. Not until tonight. The car was silent. I could hear the heat vents humming, the soft tick of the engine cooling. You said my mother left me something, I finally said. Patricia opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. Your mother had a life insurance policy, $250,000 with you as the sole beneficiary. She also had a trust account she'd been building since you were born, college fund essentially. At the time of her death, it held approximately $62,000. She flipped a page. Additionally, your mother co-owned a small bakery in downtown Ashland with a business partner. Upon her death, her share of the business, valued at roughly $70,000, was to be held in trust for you until you turned 18. I did the math in my head. It came out to nearly $400,000. Where is it? I asked. Patricia looked at me. That's what we intend to prove in court. Based on our investigation, Victor Ashford has been drawing from your trust account since the year he became your guardian. The life insurance was deposited into an account in your name that he controlled and systematically drained. Your mother's share of the bakery was sold 3 years after her death. The proceeds went into Victor's personal accounts. I thought of my mattress from the curb, the storage room with no window, the hand-me-down clothes, the 40-minute walks to work. He called me a burden, but I wasn't a burden. I was his paycheck. Have you ever met someone who treated you like garbage but refused to let you go? Someone who made you feel worthless while extracting every bit of value you had? If you know what that math looks like, Tell me in the comments. I think you already understand. Patricia drove us to a Marriott off I-95. Not Victor's house, not a shelter, just somewhere clean and quiet and safe. Marcus checked us in under his name. Separate rooms, adjoining door. The first thing I did when I walked into mine was stand in the middle of it and not know what to do with myself. The bed had white sheets. They smelled like detergent instead of mildew. There was a window, a real window, with curtains I could open. I stood there for a long time, just looking out at the parking lot lights, because looking out a window from my own room was something I hadn't done in 15 years. While I stood there, the memories came flooding back. The first time Victor made me cook dinner, I was 8. I burned the rice, and he didn't let me eat for 2 days. By 10, I was doing everyone's laundry, all the dishes, all the grocery shopping on foot. By 12, I was cleaning bathrooms, scrubbing floors on my hands and knees while Paige watched TV in the living room. When I was 14, I asked Gloria why I didn't have a social security card like the other kids at school. She told me it was because I was different, and I should be grateful they didn't send me to foster care. Grateful. That word had shaped my entire life. Be grateful. Show gratitude. You owe us everything. But I didn't owe them anything. They owed me. A knock on the adjoining door. Marcus, holding 2 cups of coffee from the lobby. He set one on the desk and sat in the chair across the room. Not too close, not too far. Like he was afraid if he moved too fast, I'd disappear again. I need proof, I said. Not just the story, not just the photograph. I need something that shows me this is real. Of course, he said. No hesitation, no offense. I'd spent 21 years in a house where asking a question was treated like an act of war. And here was a man who answered like questions were the most natural thing in the world. Patricia arrived at 9 the next morning with a garment bag and a fresh legal pad. Something clean to wear, she said, handing me the bag. Inside was a pair of dark jeans and a soft gray sweater, tags still attached. It was the first time in my life I'd worn something no one else had worn first. When I came out of the bathroom, Marcus's eyes went red at the edges, but he didn't cry. He just nodded and said, "Serena used to do that, stand in front of a mirror for a long time, like she was deciding something. Then she'd smile at herself, just a little." I hadn't smiled, but I understood what he meant. Patricia sat up at the desk, spreading documents in neat rows. "Before we proceed," she said, "I need to know, do you have any paperwork from that house that might be relevant?" I thought of the envelope, the one I'd pulled from a box Victor threw away 3 months ago, the one I'd been carrying in my backpack without understanding why. I unzipped the front pocket and handed it to her. She opened it carefully. Inside was a single document, a quarterly statement from something called the Serena Colton Memorial Trust. Nadia's name was listed as the beneficiary. Victor's name was listed as the trustee. And at the bottom, a disbursement record showing $4,200 withdrawn the previous quarter. Purpose? Quote, guardian living expenses. Patricia's expression changed. Not dramatically, just the way a card player's face shifts when the final card flips. "This is exactly what we needed," she said quietly. "This proves he's been withdrawing from your trust, and based on the account number, we can subpoena the full transaction history." If I hadn't pulled that envelope from the garbage, I might still be in that basement. Sometimes the truth hides in plain sight. You just have to be ready to see it. "How much?" I asked. "How much did he take?" Patricia looked at me. "Based on what we've already traced, at least $380,000 over 15 years, possibly more." The number hung in the air. Everything I'd never had, every meal I'd cooked, every floor I'd scrubbed, every night I'd spent in that windowless room while Victor lived off my inheritance and called me a burden. "What happens now?" I asked. Patricia closed the folder. Now we build the case. Over the next 5 days, Patricia turned the hotel room into a war room. She'd reserved a suite with a conference table. By the second day, it was covered in documents, bank statements, court filings, property records, each stack flagged with colored tabs. She walked me through the evidence like a surgeon explaining an operation. Stack 1, she said, tapping the first pile. Trust account records we've subpoenaed. 15 years of withdrawals, averaging $2,000 per month. The stated purpose on every withdrawal is beneficiary care and maintenance. She looked at me. How much of that care did you actually receive? I thought of the basement, the bare bulb, the mattress that smelled like rot. None, I said. She nodded and moved on. Stack 2, life insurance payout records. $250,000 deposited into an account in your name when you were 6. By the time you turned 12, the balance was 0. The money went to home renovations, car purchases, private school tuition. Paige's private school? I said. Correct. I remembered the brochures on the kitchen table when I was 10. Paige complaining about having to wear a uniform, me walking 40 minutes to public school in shoes with holes in the soles. Stack 3, Patricia continued. The bakery sale. Your mother's business partner, a woman named Dolores Finch, sold the bakery 3 years after Serena's death. Your share, $70,000, was supposed to be held in trust for you. Instead, it was transferred directly to Victor's personal account. Did Dolores know? We've contacted her. She's willing to testify that she sent the payment specifically for your benefit and was told by Victor that it would go into your education fund. Stack 4 was the forged documents, the restraining order, the custody petition, the psychiatric evaluation that had kept Marcus away from me for 15 years. We've hired a forensic document examiner, Patricia said, Dr. Yolanda Bates. She's analyzed the signatures on the original custody filings against known samples of your mother's handwriting, checks, letters, birthday cards. And? The signatures don't match. Dr. Bates is prepared to testify that they were produced by a different hand. I stared at the piles of paper. 15 years of lies dismantled into tabbed folders. Marcus sat at the far end of the table, hands folded, watching me process everything. He hadn't said much during the briefing. He didn't need to. The documents said everything. There's one more thing, Patricia said. She pulled out a final folder. Inside was a photograph, slightly blurry, taken from a distance. 2 men at a restaurant table. One was Victor. Younger, maybe 10 years ago. The other was a man in a suit I didn't recognize. This is Judge Harold Fenton, Patricia said, pointing to the second man. He presided over your original custody hearing. He also granted every motion Victor filed to deny your father's visitation petitions. Did they know each other? They golfed together, served on the same church board. Their children attended the same private school. She paused. Judge Fenton retired 2 years ago, which means a new judge will hear our case, one with no connection to Victor Ashford. I looked at the photograph, then at the stacks of evidence, then at Marcus. What do you need from me? I asked. Patricia closed the final folder. Your testimony. Your willingness to stand in that courtroom and tell the truth about how you lived for 15 years. She paused. And your patience, because Victor doesn't know what's coming, and when he finds out, he's going to fight. I thought about Victor at the birthday party, the way he'd looked at me when he slapped me, like I was something he owned. He didn't know I was about to take everything back. I'm ready, I said. Patricia almost smiled. Then let's go to court. 2 days before the court date, a letter arrived at the Marriott's front desk. It was addressed to Nadia Ashford, not Nadia Colton, because Victor still refused to believe I had any other name. Inside, a single page on Victor's company letterhead, handwritten, and a photograph. Me at 7 years old, sitting on Victor's lap in the living room of the house in Ashland, wearing a yellow dress I didn't remember owning. He was smiling. I was smiling. It looked like a family. The letter read, Nadia, I don't know who this man is or what he's told you, but he is not your father. He's a stranger exploiting a confused young woman who doesn't know any better. We are your family. We have been your family for 15 years. Come home. We can work this out. I forgive you for leaving. Dad. I read it 3 times. The word forgive hit me differently each time. First like a door opening, then like a lock clicking shut, then like a hand gripping my wrist. He forgave me? For leaving? After he hit me? I sat on the edge of the hotel bed and felt the room tilt. 15 years of conditioning doesn't shut off because you find a trust document in a garbage bag. Somewhere inside me, a voice I'd carried since childhood whispered, what if Victor's right? What if this is all a trick? What if Marcus just wants something from you too? I looked at Marcus, who was reading in the chair by the window, and said, how do I know you're not the same as him? How do I know you won't use me for something else? He put the book down. He didn't look hurt. He looked like a man who understood exactly why I was asking. You don't, he said. Not yet, and I'm not going to try to convince you with words. Words are cheap. The DNA doesn't lie. The documents don't lie. The court will decide what's true. He paused. All I'm asking is that you let the evidence speak. He picked up his book again and went back to reading. And that, the not pushing, the giving me room, was the thing that scared me most because it was so different from everything I knew. That night, I couldn't sleep, so I did what I always did when the world stopped making sense. I looked at the evidence. I took the trust statement from my backpack and set it on the desk beside Victor's letter. 2 documents, one from a bank confirming that Victor had been withdrawing thousands from my inheritance, one from Victor claiming he was my family. If Victor loved me, why did I sleep in a basement with no window? If Victor loved me, why didn't I have a birth certificate, a social security card, a single piece of identification with my name on it? If Victor loved me, why did I spend 15 years cooking his meals, cleaning his house, and walking 40 minutes to work while Paige drove an Audi? The answer was in the math. It had always been in the math. Victor didn't love me. Victor invoiced me. Have you ever been pulled back towards someone who hurt you just because the guilt felt familiar? If you have, tell me in the comments, because I think that kind of pull is something you can't explain to someone who hasn't felt it. I called Patricia at 11 p.m. She picked up on the second ring, which told me she'd been expecting this call. I'm going to court, I said, not because I trust Marcus, not fully, not yet, but because I deserve to know the truth. I've earned that. That's all we need, she said. I put Victor's letter in the trash and didn't look at it again. The next morning, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror for a long time. Navy blazer Patricia had bought me, white blouse, hair pulled back, no jewelry, I didn't own any. But my hands were steady and my back was straight. I wasn't the girl who stared at the floor anymore. Richmond Circuit Court, a Tuesday morning, 2 weeks after Victor's birthday. The building was old federal brick, columns at the entrance, hallway floors that echoed every footstep, like the building wanted you to know who was coming. I arrived at 8:30 with Marcus on my left and Patricia on my right. Mrs. Delford, the neighbor who'd stood up at the party, sat in the gallery, wearing the same navy cardigan she'd worn that night. Dolores Finch, my mother's former business partner, sat beside her. Victor arrived at 8:40. Gray suit, burgundy tie, Gloria on his arm in a cream-colored dress, Paige trailing behind in something too casual for court, already looking bored. His lawyer carried a single file folder. Victor carried his chin at the angle of a man who believed this was a formality. Then he saw us. His eyes went to me first, registered the blazer, the posture, the absence of the girl who used to stare at the floor. Then they moved to Marcus, then to Patricia, then to the banker's boxes stacked on the plaintiff's table. His face didn't crumble. It recalibrated. The rapid mental arithmetic of a man who controls every variable, suddenly realizing there's one he missed. Gloria's hand tightened on his arm. Paige put her phone away. Victor and I made eye contact across the hallway. For the first time in my life, I didn't look down. The clerk opened the courtroom doors. In the matter of Colton versus Ashford. We walked in. Both sides, same door, different worlds. Patricia stood the way I imagined a scalpel would stand if it could, upright, precise, reflecting light. "Your Honor," she said, addressing Judge Carolyn Webb, "we are here to present evidence that the guardianship of Nadia Colton was obtained through fraud, specifically the forging of custody documents, the fabrication of a restraining order against the child's biological father, and the systematic theft of approximately $380,000 from the child's inheritance." She presented the trust records first. 15 years of withdrawals, the quarterly statements, the account numbers. The judge examined each page, adjusted her reading glasses, set them aside with a small nod. Then Patricia introduced the forensic handwriting analysis. Dr. Yolanda Bates analyzed the signatures on the original custody petition and the restraining order against Mr. Colton. Her conclusion, the signatures attributed to Serena Colton were produced by a different hand. Victor's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, my client has a legally executed guardianship approved by this court 15 years ago. The petitioner is attempting to relitigate a settled matter." Patricia didn't turn around. "A guardianship built on forged signatures is not settled, Your Honor. It is concealed. We are here to unconceal it." Judge Webb looked at Victor's lawyer over her glasses. "The court will hear the petitioner's full presentation. Continue, Miss Oyalard." Patricia called Dolores Finch to the stand. Dolores was in her 60s, silver-haired, steady-voiced. She'd co-owned the bakery with my mother for 12 years. "When Serena passed, I sold the business. Her share was $70,000. I sent the check to Victor Ashford with explicit instructions that it be deposited into Nadia's education fund." "Did you ever confirm the funds reached that account?" "I called once, about a year later. Victor told me everything was taken care of. I believed him." Patricia pulled up the bank records. The $70,000 had gone directly into Victor's personal checking account. From there, it had been spent on a kitchen renovation and a down payment on Paige's Audi. The courtroom was silent. Mrs. Delford testified next. She described the party, the slap, the silence of 40 guests, the way Gloria looked down at her plate. "I've lived across from that family for 12 years. I watched that girl work like hired help while the other daughter did nothing. And I watched Victor strike her across the face because she gave him a gift he thought was beneath him." Victor's lawyer didn't cross-examine. There was nothing to cross-examine. Patricia turned back to Victor. "Mr. Ashford, do you deny that you've been withdrawing funds from Nadia's trust account for 15 years? Victor straightened in his chair. "Everything I took went to the girl. Food, clothing, shelter. 15 years of that isn't cheap." "Then why was she sleeping in a basement storage room with no window?" Victor's jaw tightened. "That's an exaggeration." "We have photographs, Mr. Ashford, taken by a social services investigator last week." Patricia projected them on the courtroom screen. The bare mattress, the water heater, the single bulb, the mildewed blanket. Someone in the gallery inhaled sharply. And then Gloria stood up. No one expected it, least of all Victor. Gloria rose from the respondent's bench, smoothed the front of her cream-colored dress the way she smoothed everything, and said in a voice that shook like a wire about to snap, "Your Honor, I have something I need to say." Victor grabbed her wrist. "Gloria, sit down." She pulled free. It was the first time I'd ever seen her pull free of anything. "I helped him," Gloria said. Her mascara was already running, but this wasn't the performed crying I'd seen at the birthday party. This was different. Raw. Ugly. The kind that doesn't care about an audience. I helped him forge the restraining order. He told me it was the only way to keep the girl safe from her father, that Marcus was dangerous, that he'd hurt Serena, that we were protecting Nadia. Her voice cracked. I believed him, or I told myself I did. Victor's lawyer put his head in his hands. Victor went red from the collar up, a deep, mottled crimson I'd never seen him before. "She's lying," Victor said. "She's confused. She's trying to protect herself." "I am trying to protect myself." Gloria's voice broke high and desperate. "Because I've been protecting you for 15 years, and I can't do it anymore." She turned to look at me. Her eyes were red, swollen, searching for something I wasn't sure I could give her. "I watched you hit you," she said. "At the party, I watched you hit you, and I looked down at my plate. I've been looking down at my plate for 15 years. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear the fluorescent lights humming above us. Judge Webb let her finish. Then she said, very calmly, "Mrs. Ashford, are you stating for the record that you participated in the creation of fraudulent custody documents?" Gloria nodded. Then, when the court reporter cleared her throat, Gloria said it out loud. "Yes." "And are you aware that this testimony may result in criminal charges against you?" "Yes." "Do you wish to continue?" Gloria took a breath. Her hands were shaking. "I wrote the letter, the one that was supposed to be from Serena, the one saying she wanted Nadia placed with us. Victor dictated it. I wrote it in handwriting that looked like hers. I told myself it was for the girl's own good. I told myself we were giving her a home, but we weren't. We were taking everything she had." Paige sat frozen in the gallery, phone in her lap, mouth open. Victor was still as stone, and for the first time in my life, I saw him look afraid. Not ashamed, not remorseful. Afraid, because he was calculating, even now, how much this was going to cost him. Patricia let the silence hold for a moment. Then she said, "Your Honor, in light of Mrs. Ashford's testimony, we ask that the court consider this evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud in addition to the forgery and theft charges already presented." Judge Webb nodded slowly. "Mr. Ashford," she said, and her voice carried the weight of someone who had seen a great deal and was still capable of being appalled. "One more outburst, and I will hold you in contempt." Victor said nothing. His lawyer was already packing up. I looked at Gloria, the woman who had pulled me into the kitchen when Marcus came to the door, who had told me to be grateful, who had watched me scrub floors and carry trays and sleep in a basement for 15 years. She wasn't looking for forgiveness, I could see that. She was just finally telling the truth because the weight of the lie had become heavier than the consequences. I didn't forgive her. Not then. Maybe not ever. But I understood something. Sitting in that courtroom, watching the family that had stolen my life collapse under the weight of their own confessions. The truth doesn't need you to forgive anyone. It just needs to be told. Judge Webb took 11 minutes to review the final documents. 11 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on the courtroom wall, the old analog kind with a second hand that ticks instead of sweeps, and counted every rotation. When she looked up, she didn't address Victor first, she addressed me. "Ms. Colton," she paused, "and I will use that name now because the evidence before this court compels it." I felt Marcus shift beside me. Patricia's pen stopped moving. "The court has reviewed the petition, the forensic handwriting analysis, the financial records, the testimony of the witnesses, and the voluntary statement made by Mrs. Ashford." Judge Webb removed her glasses. The evidence is unambiguous. She turned to Victor. He was sitting rigidly upright, tie still knotted, hands flat on the table, a man holding the posture of authority while the authority drained out of him. The custody documents filed in this court 15 years ago were obtained through fraud. The signatures attributed to Serena Colton have been determined by certified forensic analysis to be forgeries. The restraining order against Marcus Colton was fabricated. The biological father never consented to the termination of his parental rights. Victor didn't move. It is the ruling of this court that the guardianship of Nadia Colton is declared void ab initio. The guardianship is annulled in its entirety. Gloria let out a sound that wasn't quite a word. Furthermore, the court orders Victor and Gloria Ashford to make full restitution of all funds improperly withdrawn from the Serena Colton Memorial Trust, the life insurance proceeds, and the bakery sale proceeds, totaling $382,000 to Nadia Colton. Victor's lawyer closed his folder. He'd given up. Finally, this court is referring the matter to the Hanover County District Attorney's Office for investigation of potential criminal charges, including but not limited to forgery, fraud, theft by conversion, and child neglect. The judge set down her papers. The child's legal identity as Nadia Colton is restored, effective immediately. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down, and the sound of it, that single wooden knock, was the loudest thing I'd ever heard in my life. Louder than the slap, louder than 15 years of silence. It sounded like a lock opening. Victor was standing at the bottom of the courthouse steps when I came out. He looked diminished. Not physically, he was still a big man, still broad in the shoulders, but something structural had given way. His tie was loosened, his jacket was unbuttoned. Gloria sat in their car at the curb, forehead against the steering wheel, engine running. I was halfway down the steps when he said it, the name he'd assigned me 15 years ago, the name a judge had just struck from the record. Nadia. I stopped, turned. He looked at me the way he always had, like I was something he owned and couldn't quite figure out the value of. But now there was something else underneath. Something that might have been fear. After everything I did for you, he said, after 15 years under my roof, this is how you repay me? I stood on the steps in my navy blazer with October sunlight on my shoulders, and I felt, for the first time, the full weight of what he'd just said. Even now, even with the judge's ruling still ringing in the air, even with the evidence proving he'd forged documents to steal me from my father and drained every cent my mother left me, Victor Ashford believed he was owed something. You didn't do anything for me, I said. You did everything to me, and now it's over. I turned and walked down the remaining steps. Marcus was waiting by the navigator, door open. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He just held the door the way you hold a door for someone you've been waiting 15 years to hold a door for. I got in. The door closed, and the last thing I saw through the tinted window was Victor Ashford standing alone on the courthouse steps, watching his investment drive away. 6 months later. I live in Richmond now. Not with Marcus, not yet. I have an apartment off Grove Avenue, a studio with tall windows that let in so much morning light, I sometimes just stand there for a minute before starting my day. The windows were the first thing I looked for when I went hunting apartment. I spent 15 years in a room without one. Now I need to see the sky when I wake up. I'm studying for my GED. I'm also enrolled in culinary classes at a community college downtown. Which is ironic, I know. Victor made me cook every meal for 15 years, and now I'm choosing it. But that's the difference, isn't it? Between something done to you and something you decide to do. The ingredients are the same. The meaning is completely different. Marcus and I have dinner every Sunday at his house, a small craftsman bungalow in the Fan District with a blue front door. He's not a great cook. His specialty is overcooked chicken and slightly burned vegetables. But he makes it himself, and he sets the table for two, and he asks me about my week and listens to the answer. We're not perfect. There are awkward silences. There are moments when neither of us knows what to say because you can't recover 15 stolen years over chicken. But he's there, every Sunday, without fail. As for the Ashfords, Victor and Gloria are awaiting trial. Forgery, fraud, theft, child neglect. The house in Ashland is under a second mortgage to cover the restitution payment. Victor was asked to resign from his position at his company. He did not go quietly. Gloria, who cooperated with the investigation, may receive a reduced charge. I don't know how I feel about that yet. Paige moved in with a cousin in Fredericksburg, got a job at a retail store, the first job she's ever had. I go to therapy every Thursday. A woman named Dr. Reeves who has a small office with a plant on the windowsill and doesn't tell me how to feel. She just asks questions and lets me find my own answers, which, after 15 years of being told what to think, feels like learning a new language. Healing doesn't happen overnight. Some mornings I still wake up at 4:30 with my heart racing, already mentally cataloging chores that no longer exist. But then I open the curtains and there's the sky, and I remember where I am. I want to be clear about something before I go. This story isn't about revenge. I know it might look that way, the courtroom, the ruling, the restitution, the criminal charges. But revenge would mean I wanted Victor to suffer the way I suffered. I don't. I want him to be held accountable. Those are different things. Revenge is a fire you light hoping someone else burns. Accountability is just turning on the lights so everyone can see what was already there. If you're in a family where you're tolerated instead of loved, where your presence is endured, not valued, where you've been taught that gratitude means silence and obedience means survival, I want you to hear this. You are not the problem. You were never the problem. The people who made you feel like a burden were carrying their own debts, and they put the weight on you because you were small enough to accept it. You deserve to know your own name. Family isn't paperwork. It isn't a court decree or a custody file or a forged signature. Family is the person who sits with you while you learn to trust again. The person who says, of course, when you ask for proof instead of faith. The person who holds the door and doesn't ask you to be grateful for it. Last Sunday, Marcus and I sat on the porch of his bungalow with the blue front door. He was drinking coffee, I was reading. Neither of us was talking, and it was the most comfortable silence I've ever known. At one point, he looked over and said, "I'm glad you're here." And I said, "Me too." My name is Nadia Colton, and for the first time in my life, I know exactly who I am. Thank you for staying until the end. If the story made you feel something, anger, relief, recognition, or just the quiet understanding that you've been in a room like that too, write it in the comments. I read every one. And if you want to hear what happened to a woman whose mother-in-law tried to steal her house while she was in the hospital, that story is right here. Click it. I promise you won't regret it. Until next time, take care of yourselves. And remember, have you ever stayed silent to protect someone you love, even when it hurt you?